Queen. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, and as I always say, it's a beautiful day to have a webinar. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and performance-driven marketing industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure welcoming you back to yet a fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in roughly 20 minutes. Today, we're joined by three absolutely amazing industry friends, including Jon Barracca of MediaNet, Erik Lundberg of Claritas, and Mike Renfro of Blockboard. And together, we'll be diving into the PDMI's reoccurring series on performance media optimization by looking at how both data and attribution are driving our craft. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please use the questions tab located in the control panel. Also, please note you're welcome to ask questions throughout today's conversation, but we will be holding all answers to the end of our today's discussion. Alrighty, folks, with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. His love language is first and last touch attribution. He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is the chief evangelist at PCM Integration, a direct marketing agency located in Clearwater, South Florida. In addition to his day job, Chris is the chairperson of the PDMI's Brand Response Council and the host of the podcast Men Folk Journey. Chris, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much. And for the 146th time, because today is the 146th episode, take it away, my friend. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Johnny, and welcome in everybody. Mike, John, and Eric, so glad you're here. Love that introduction. We're going to dive into data and measurement. Look, data has always been the cornerstone of effective performance marketing. And of course, measurement has always been the reason why marketing budgets are even applied. Performance is about attribution of spend, right? So the two core tenets of performance, the data of the audience that you're reaching and the measurement of the activity you're doing, they're both undergoing massive changes. You know, there are changes in messaging and persuasion tactics. We know that. There's changes within, different offers that are exciting to folks. There's definitely changes in the marketing channels. We know all of that and don't have to go in. But the data and how to use it safely, connect it wisely, and measure it consistently might be the most critical transformation in the industry. It might be the most impactful transition in the industry. So we're going to unpack how partners and technologies play with agencies, publishers, platforms, and brands in a whole new world where it's more important than ever to get the data and the attribution models correctly. Super excited. We're going to do some brief introductions. I'll get started. Like Johnny said, I am Chris Foster, the Chief Evangelist of PCM Integrations and Postcard Mania. PCM Integrations is the #1 direct mail platform for SMBs, mid-market companies, agencies, and enterprise and sales organizations. Postcard Mania is the #1 direct marketing platform for small businesses. Mike, we'll start with you and we'll move it along.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. Always excited to be here. Mike Renfro with Blockboard. I'm VP of Platform Demand and Partnerships. Based here in Chicago, originally from Austin. Excited to be here.
Excellent. John.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Jon Barracca, SVP of Platform Partnerships at Media.net. Media.net is an SSP focused on bringing walled garden performance to the open web. And in my role, I work with our DSP partners, our curation platform, and then as well as our ecosystem and ad tech partners, including data and measurement partners.
Excellent. Eric.
Hey, thanks for having me. So Erik Lundberg, Chief Growth Officer of our media and agency business, working really closely with media agencies and technology partners such as Media.net SSP.
Great. All right, so we're going to dive in. And John, we're going to start with you. You just talked about, used a whole lot of stuff about unifying search signals, first party, third party, etc. Can you please just tell us in plain speak, what does that actually mean? And more importantly, how does that actually help the advertisers?
For sure. So taking kind of a quick step back, I did mention a whole lot of stuff about bringing walled garden performance into the open web. And really taking a step back on Media.net, we're an SSP, but Media.net as an organization has been around for roughly 15 years. And we operate one of the largest performance marketplaces in the industry, where we're essentially able to bring search budgets and budgets that are traditionally meant for search into the open web and drive conversions for search advertisers across the scale and quality and uniqueness of open web publishing content. And we've been doing that successfully for a long time and still do that today. And we've been able to actually create a feedback loop of what's actually converting and having lower funnel performance conversion metrics, and bringing that back around to create targeting and strategies for marketers. So what search signals is, in its real kind of easiest, simplest form, is we understand signals from search advertisers. What are the keywords that they're buying? What are the terms that are important for a search advertiser, for a particular vertical, for a particular line of business? And then we're able to marry that with actual consumer intent across the open web. So understanding if I'm in market for a vehicle and I'm on 5 auto websites and researching different types of SUVs, and I'm a search advertiser and I'm trying to reach that same consumer, we're able to look at that intent of the consumer across content and create targeting and packages of media that'll essentially bring that to an advertiser. So what search signals and how that kind of unifies things in practice for a marketer is we're bringing highly qualified consumers together for marketers to be able to reach. And that's something that's very unique, especially in kind of programmatic, where typically there's mid and upper funnel budgets that are more audience-based targeting. We're able to bring that context and the intent of a consumer into programmatic to complement strategies of maybe a marketer that's buying audiences to extend their reach, or just make their potential working media and actual budgets work harder and smarter by bringing them intent along with the actual consumer themselves.
Right, I like that. So it's kind of lower to middle funnel marketing and almost using performance metrics to drive the data. That is pretty unique. I like that. And speaking of unique, Mike, Blockboard is doing something unique by having this unmistakable verified data that uses blockchain. I guess the question that I would have for you, because we're talking about data and measurement, part of that data has got to be wasteful. There's a prevalence of bad data that performance marketers need to be aware of. What is that like in the normal marketing environment?
Oh my gosh, right. So yeah, great question. And to give you a quick 15-second overview, Blockboard is a new emerging DSP. We have brought the power of blockchain to guarantee 100% real human before an impression even comes into our ad call, comes into our platform. You know, Chris, what we're seeing, and and being in the spirit of just being candid, it's getting worse, right? 3 years ago, you saw the ANA come out, 22 billion. 8 months ago they came out, it increased 34%. We're starting to see it's just with the advancement of AI, right? What they're doing today is totally different what they're going to do tomorrow. So we're seeing, across CTV landscape, close to around a 25 to 35% ad call rejection. Verified to default. So when an ad call comes in, we send it through our blockchain through a smart contract, and if it's not a real human, that ad call doesn't come into our platform. It's increasing, unfortunately. So what we've done. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to stop real quick. I just want to put some context in. You're saying that ANA reported it was $22 billion in waste?
Yeah, waste and fraud. That was 3 years ago on the ANA Programmatic Transparency Report.
Wow, so that was 3 years ago. Clearly it's going to be, it's more now. That was because 3 years ago seems like a lifetime in digital media. And if you've got a third now of these ad calls being rejected, you could argue that advertisers are basically flushing almost 25 to 30% of their dollars into the toilet when they're launching these campaigns.
Oh yes, 100%. And this is where we believe that why we're so strong in performance, right? It's always the notion and formula of bad data in equals bad outcomes, right? When we can guarantee 100% real human, right? That's where you start seeing performance spikes, right? I think the industry kind of looked at what was really kind of years of just understanding after the impression. We're taking a look at is what happened because of the impression. So when we look at, it's very important to us. We want to make sure the impression is real. We want to make sure the impression is going to a real human, and we want to make sure that did it actually create a measurable outcome.
Mm-hmm.
When you answer those three questions, and when you can't guarantee 100% real human, the question is always successful for us. I mean, we see spikes at 25 plus when we launch campaigns just because of real human.
Because it's a real person. It's funny because you don't want to market to pickles or fire hydrants. You want to market to people because they're the only ones that are buying.
Yeah, Matt Watson always says, bots don't buy, right?
Bots don't buy. So Blockboard's been around X number of years. Eric, I know that Claritas has been around since the last century, literally. In fact, Claritas has been around since the last millennia, literally. So in that light, in that spirit, though, it's been on the forefront of marketing data for decades and has evolved and changed over time as behaviors and data ability has changed. So how are you now at Claritas expanding the reach to meet the needs of these new marketers and connect to these new audience types?
Great question. So you're right. Claritas has been around for over 40 years. We actually invented segmentation with our Prism clusters that still, widely used today. Have an industry-leading identity graph, large audience business, measurement business. So we spun out of Nielsen about 8 or 9 years ago, and since then we've acquired 5 companies. So we really put together an incredible technology stack. The last company we acquired was Arts AI. I was the CRO there and came over about 3 years ago. So to answer your question, what we've really done is we've put those pieces together and built an AI optimization platform that can be used to optimize audiences, optimize creative, and then we're moving into media optimization as well. So we actually can optimize those things in real time as the campaign runs, and we're just seeing phenomenal results. So typically over 50% lift. So it's really been excellent.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful. And it gets my next question. And Jon, I'm going to toss this to you, but Eric and Mike, feel free to weigh in. One of the things that I see happening over the last X number of years is this increased attention to partnerships, right? So, Eric, you said your title was Chief Growth with Partnerships. Jon Barracca, you're SVP of Partnerships, right? So these are things where a company or a business or a brand or a service knows they can't do it all for a client. And the client is looking for the full solution, but it really doesn't exist. And if it starts to exist, then you could suffer from the dilution of expertise across, different service levels. And so, Eric, you just mentioned that Claritas has been acquiring different technologies. You could call that a partnership, right? They realized they couldn't do it themselves, so I'm going to partner/acquire. So Jon, I'd like you to kind of lean in on this and then everybody weigh in. How is the landscape changing so that this measurement and data, ecosystem is partnering up and working together a little bit better than it did before?
Yeah, for sure. Good question. And I think like the short answer to that is it's out of, not to sound like too cliche, but it's out of solving like a challenge for a marketer is where a lot of these partnerships actually start to form. And it's like problem first, and then how do we get there for a solution? And some of that is even, Mike, you mentioned that A&A study. Some of that waste is just around the expectation of a marketer, and what's actually delivered is there's gaps in between that where we're trying to make sure that media is run efficiently through from end marketer to publisher, but not always everybody or all the constituents within the supply chain, especially in programmatic where there may be many, are sure of what the campaign goals are in a lot of cases, right? So partnerships become important. What we're really trying to solve for, and we have a partnership with Claritas and Eric for well over a year, which I think is a great example of what we're trying to do, is there's a lot of fragmentation. what is a marketer's goals? Like, what is their business outcome they're trying to solve for? And then what are you as an SSP or a publisher or a DSP doing to help that marketer reach the goal? And that's our partnership with Claritas. But really, as an SSP, we're sitting as close to the publisher as possible. We see 100% of the requests that are available across any premium publisher piece of content in the open web. Marketers and even DSPs don't even see that much, for lots of reasons. There's infrastructure challenges, there's data center costs, there's a lot of things that are in play in the programmatic ecosystem where, one end doesn't fully speak to another. But really, like, what we're trying to solve for, especially with our partnership with Claritas as a measurement provider of record for a lot of brands and agencies, is how do we connect the end business outcome? What are you optimizing for? What's your conversion event that's important to you? And how do we map that to the sell side and publishers' impressions and requests that are available to create, one, just a direct line between business outcome and an actual request, but then two, it's how can we give you more of what's working really well and what's performing in the eyes of the marketer, and give you less waste to help kind of reduce all of that kind of infrastructure, either duplicativeness or other kind of noise that might be taking the place of something that's performing well. So creating that kind of breaking down the silos, if you will, and creating that direct line between marketer, KPI, and publisher request is really how a lot of these partnerships are born. And there's a lot of other examples of those, but partnering with Claritas has been something that we have many use cases with mutual clients where the ecosystem together are helping solve different areas, but bringing them together into one solution is actually really helpful in reaching marketer goals.
That's fantastic. You kind of answered my question in terms of teaming up, right? Because the team up is something to where you can have an expertise and then team up with someone else who has an expertise. Mike, I guess I'll go to you. You guys have developed an expertise with the blockchain, but you guys have also been leaning into AI, just figuring out how to use that either for attribution, for measurement, and the like. Now that you've got the accurate data, because it's people, AI is not applied to fuzzy data, right? AI, if you think about AI's taking into account 30% of bot and fraudulent and non-existing traffic, the numbers can get really weird, and the conclusions from AI can really point an advertiser in the wrong direction. Because you're starting with data that's real people, how is Blockboard now using AI to make attribution models more accurate?
Yeah, great question. And I'll just start with this. It was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. Matt invited me to a dinner with Rashid Tabakawala, right? And this is, I don't know if you follow Rashid, but oh my gosh, he's one of the wisest men. He's the guy who started StarCom, right? Very first digital agency. So when he said that blockchain has to be attached to AI, think about it. Blockchain as the guardrails, AI operating inside the guardrails, can't get outside the guardrails. That really blew my mind. I can tell you, I didn't eat one bite of my food. I just listened for probably about an hour and a half of this guy just talking. So it really comes down to, what we're trying to do, right? We believe that we built a better mousetrap because we can't guarantee 100% human. We've partnered with, as partnerships are important, thus media.net we've partnered with. But when it comes to really the AI models, we really want to really understand the open web, right? And when you can say two things, you can say the open web is safe when you run through us because there are blockchain attached to it. But we partnered with Databricks to give us the insight across publisher content viewing to reading social posts to understanding search behavior. It gives us the ability to build out models that, coupled with blockchain, 100% real human, really helps us propel in real time, right? So we've launched Block AI about 2.5 years ago. We just went through Block 2.0. We're working on Block AI 3.0.
Of course.
Which is Yeah, which is going to be more ingestation signals. We're actually using a lot of their AI models to really kind of forecast kind of lookalike type audiences based on that consumption. So it's really nice when we can couple. Listen, first party data is great, third party data is fantastic, right? But when you can actually start viewing a client's second party, which is qualified viewer pool, which is about 90. We gather viewer pools for 90% viewed or higher across our CTV, encapsulates that bucket. Coupled with AI, it helps us move from upper to lower very, very easy.
Got it. That's cool. I like that. And, you know, it's so funny how these technologies are changing. You talked about the data bricks. There's AI, of course, and you know, Eric, you had mentioned with Claritas over your X number of years, you built an identity graph, and we know that identity graphs can be proprietary. But I mean, let's be frank. There's a lot of identity graphs out there, right? I mean, a lot of people said, "I've got this identity graph." Okay, I get that. That's cool, and not taking anything away from anybody's identity graph, right? But I guess the question is, if I'm an advertiser and I'm seeing a bunch of these identity graphs, what are the big differences between them, and how is you know Claritas's secret sauce identity graph slightly different than another provider?
Sure. Yeah, we really take kind of a multi-nodal, multi-partner approach, kind of multi-spine. So I think that's critical. Really fill in a lot of the gaps there. Other graphs, they can be just deterministic or just probabilistic. So again, we take a hybrid approach. Similar thing when you get into kind of individual device level versus household. You really shouldn't just look at one of those. It's super important to look at both. And I'd say lastly, you want your graph to be able to use in open environments, in your own environments, not just kind of in a closed platform. So we're real open there. My advice would be, run some tests, run match rate tests, right? Because you might get a 60% match rate with one graph and an 85% match rate with another. And I did just real briefly wanted to go back to your partnership question for a second, because it's so important, I think, for all your listeners here. It really is a 1 + 1 = 3 or 4, right? And so we're seeing that now. We're feeding measurement outcome data back to media.net. We're feeding that to a partner of both of ours, Sightly, for contextual. And like when you're able to optimize that campaign in real time as it runs with those outcome signals, you see just huge increases in performance. And I was in Horizon Media's offices yesterday in New York. They have a whole Horizon OS ecosystem, and they have AI cohort 1, AI cohort 2. They've invited AI partners to participate in that open ecosystem. There's about 30 partners. And so it is extremely important in the industry, and I just would encourage companies to really lean into partnerships. So.
That's great. I love that. No, that makes sense to me. I guess we're already 11:25, and before we bring audience questions, I told you guys that this would be over like this. I've got two questions. I think the first one's kind of a too softball-y, and everyone's going to have the same answer. The role of human expertise along with AI. You guys need that, right? You have to have the human expertise. All right, so that's done. So the other question that I have, it goes back to Eric, what you were talking about with partnerships, is that their business services are expanding reach. So Claritas, you've started to acquire some businesses. Jon at Media, you are you stitch together partners, right? You work with both Blockboard and you work with Claritas. It's kind of like this hub, this translator. But how do you see business services like yourselves expanding your reach and features and services that you offer versus kind of stopping at a boundary and say, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to leverage a partner to do that and bring them in. This is just an open question for all three of you to think about.
I think I can kind of take a first stab at this. I think it kind of goes back to, again, if we're solving for a customer, or a client need or a challenge, and this industry, especially on the programmatic side, is moving at an incredibly fast pace. And the introduction, and now, we're seeing scale of agentic workflows, of MCP connectors, of different use cases of AI, interoperability, and having an ecosystem that can work with how client or a customer or a large agency wants to work is paramount. We're seeing a lot of large agencies bringing their own workflows in-house because they have the capabilities to do that now from a planning and an activation perspective and data and insights and everything else that is important for a marketer to understand. So having the ability to bring your ecosystem to them and however they want to use that, I think is more important than ever. So I don't know if there's necessarily like a boundary or like a kind of a line that we're going to stop expansion. It's really going to be how the world is moving around us and being able to kind of adapt to that.
Awesome. Eric, Mike, you want to weigh in, or are we good?
I just want to agree with Jon said. It's evolution, right?
Right.
We're going to be doing something 6 months different. We know that, especially with the fast track of AI, where it's going. It's crazy, but it's all about in full partnership, but keeping the eye on the ball for the client, right? It's all about making them successful. It's all about them being a partnership. And I love Eric's. I use that all the time. 1 + 1 = 3. It has to be that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yep,
that's my input.
Fantastic.
And just to build on that, go where it makes sense, where your data and technology and your expertise makes sense. That's what we do. You got to focus, right? You don't want to go after the entire marketing stack. And I think all three of these companies are doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I like that. All righty, Johnny, it is 11:28. We knew it'd go fast with these incredible masters of their craft. What kind of questions do we have from the field?
Guys, we had a very active and excited audience. They enjoyed what you shared, so thank you very much. Let's start with an opinion question. What's the biggest measurement mistake marketers are making today? If you're out there working away and you see there's one thing that's common that happens an awful lot, something that you could course correct, make a big difference, what would that be?
I 100% transparency, right? Where it can, I'll just make it really short. I have to say, a lot of our legacy DSPs are not being transparent enough. When I say transparency, I'm talking about actual timestamps, show level, log level, URL level, right? We're on the chain. We can't hide anything. So I think marketers need to start demanding more transparency. You're starting to hear it. That was one of the main things at Cannes this year, right? It was all about AI, but now, what's the transparency behind AI? I think that's where marketers are lagging, and the client needs to demand 100% transparency.
Gotta love transparency. Guys, you want to add anything to that, or should we go to the next question?
You can go to the next question. I thought it was great, yeah.
All righty, let's move to an opinion style question here. I'm sorry, an ownership style question here. When brands, agencies, platforms, and publishers report different results, who gets to define the truth in that equation?
The last
we know
one
that
talking.
happens.
Usually the brand.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding, to some extent, right? Like, if the brand is defining what the truth is, making sure that everybody is aligned on that truth throughout the whole supply chain is extremely important, because if the brand's truth is what the business outcome is, or whatever the KPI is, then everybody should be working to solve towards that goal, and not proxy metrics or something else that might be more easily available. So I think that's kind of where you have to listen, but everybody needs to be aligned.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is we're doing this for the brand. They're the reason, the purpose, and the results are about them. Therefore, they get final say.
I mean, we can make recommendations, but it's their brand, their budget. They know it better than anybody, right? So we need to give as much data and insights to help that as possible.
Yep, they write the checks.
Totally agree. Well, let's do one more question together, and then you guys can all give an answer. That'd be amazing. It's kind of a crystal ball question. Share one tip for performance brands trying to activate their data in 2027. what would you recommend people do in 2027 based on everything you know in the marketplace today, all the technology that exists, and everything that's coming down the pipeline? What's your one recommendation?
Sure, I'll start with that. Don't just do what you've been doing for 20 years and go off something that comes out of your media planning tool and target a specific demographic. So use your performance outcomes data. And we do that at Claritas. We do that in partnership with media.net. Find the data segments that are driving the conversions and hone in a portion of your budget on that. So, and then I'd say the last thing too is you're starting to see AI being able to recommend audiences, and that's very powerful. So that'd be my 2 cents.
I would say, in addition to what Eric said, which I think is extremely important, being able to test and learn, understanding the consumer journey is, we were talking about business outcomes being fragmented, but the consumer journey is also more fragmented than ever. So making sure that you understand how to reach the consumer at different touch points throughout their daily lives, whether it's, through hitting them on the web, different frequencies across different devices, understanding, who's in their household, and finding solutions that can actually do that is very important. And if you can make that measurable, then even better, because that's really, when you get into that lower funnel of intent, being able to reach the consumer in that moment of intent is extremely important, and it's becoming harder to do, but there are solutions out there that can help with that.
Yeah, I'll add very quickly. I think all marketers kind of understand attribution, given the last credit, either last touch, middle touch, first touch. But I think paying attention to kind of more incrementality, I think is going to be very important for 2027. As understanding, we here at Blockboard, we do a lot of ghost bidding, right? To value the really cool the insights between control and exposed. So I think understand the incremental and the lift between that is really going to give insights to future success.
That's great. The other thing too, I will add, is adding other channels, right? So especially that mid-lower funnel, thinking about something like direct mail, thinking about the blend of CTV and digital and physical media, because the targeting is better than ever, and especially for some of those lower to mid-funnel folks, really persuading them with an added touch of automated direct mail really pushes that customer to that next stage of the buying cycle, either to return to buyer to get more information.
Yeah, I thought John was spot on. It's all about the customer journey, those touch points. How many touch points does it take to an actual conversion, right?
And what sequence of touch points actually pushes somebody over the line? And then to Eric's point, there are different buying behaviors based on the different segment, right? Because if I might be open to a Facebook ad in the morning when I'm eating breakfast, but midday I'm not going to look at it, but I might be open to a CTV landing spot later in the evening when I'm hanging around, right? And different people respond in different ways. So to all of your points about looking at that attribution graph, seeing what kind of customer responds to a sequence and to the layering of channels over time, I think is going to also yield really interesting results.
100%.
Well, guys, phenomenal session. Chris, John, Eric, Mike, great conversation today. Thank you so much. And while all take 20s are always good, or shall I say great, thank you for making episode 146 special today. We appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, and your sharing. Folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, we'd like to take a moment to invite you back to our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, hosted on Wednesday, September 11th. September 11th, special day, but also can't believe it's fall. What the heck is going on? At 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, speaking of fall, I've got the fall conference of PDMI West on my mind. I'd love to have you all come join us at PDMI West in San Diego. It's hosted October 19th to 21 at the beautiful Intercontinental Hotel on the Bay side. So if you live somewhere where it's going to get cold soon, come spend a couple extra warm days with us in San Diego and extend that summer of yours. We have an amazing room rate at $334 a night at the host hotel, at roughly $250 to $300 a night per discount per room based on what kind of room you buy yourself. And you have to be a badge holder to access this deal. To get your badge and your hotel room, please visit thepdmi.com. That's thepdmi.com. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Thanks to our moderator, Chris. We'll see you all in San Diego. Make it a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.